What's up, runners? It's Justin, your average running PT, and I want to talk to you guys today about the Skechers Go Run Ride 8 and how it performed for me after 50 miles. Alright, so I've already done one review of the Go Run Ride 8, and that was my initial impression run. And now what I want to do is talk to you about how it's performed over the last 50 miles. I just ran the last 7 miles in it this morning, 6.5 miles in it this morning, and I wanted to go ahead and bring this to you guys so that you know just what to expect from this shoe. And gosh, I'm professional. Alright, so here's my initial impression of the Go Run Ride 8. After the first run, I felt like it was really stiff, but responsive. So I was really excited to kind of see what it was gonna do over the next 50 miles, just to see, if that stiffness was gonna change or if it was gonna feel kind of stiff and hard underfoot the whole time. And here's kind of the basic gist of it. After those 50 miles, it's still a little stiff. It's still very responsive, but it is definitely still a very stiff kind of a shoe. And when I say stiff, I mean it's really kind of firm underfoot. It doesn't feel like it gives very much. Now I would say that it's maybe gotten a little bit softer over the course of 50 miles, but I'm not sure whether to attribute that to actual use or whether to attribute it to the fact that the temperatures have actually changed over the course of those 50 miles. So in the first 2 runs that I took, it was probably in the 40s, and my shoes sit out in the garage, so it was probably sitting in about 40 or low 50s kind of weather. But over the last few runs, I've actually brought the shoe inside and let it sit in about 70-degree temperatures before I go out for my run in the shoe. And it's been a little bit warmer outside anyway, so it's been in the 60s, low to mid 60s, pretty much the whole time, the rest of the way. And I think that has potentially made it feel a little bit softer, but it's still pretty stiff and pretty firm underfoot. So here's the specs. Basically, this is an 8.7 ounce shoe in a men's size 9. The stack height is 30 millimeters in the heel and 24 millimeters in the forefoot. This gives you a drop from heel to toe of 6 millimeters. The sizing is pretty true. I got a size 11.5, which is my normal shoe size, and I felt no issues. I felt like the sizing was just about right. The upper is this knit material that's pretty spacious in the forefoot. I feel pretty locked down everywhere else, but in the forefoot, there's a little bit of swimming going around in there. It is a little bit spacious. There's a little bit of extra material that kind of bunches up in the front. But overall, I tend to like that feel. I like that feel of being able to be a little bit more free in the forefoot. So I wasn't too bothered by the fact that there was a little bit more space out there. The midsole is, of course, the hyperburst material, and the hyperburst material has been pretty nice, other than the fact that it has felt really quite firm. And I don't really know why that is, because I have also used the Skechers Go Run Razor 3, which the hyperburst material feels completely different in that shoe. And I can't tell whether that's because of the outsole that's making a little bit extra rigidity in this shoe versus the Razor 3. It's a very thin, very thin rubber that's got very little rigidity at all. So in terms of the feel underfoot with the midfoot, or with the midsole, it feels pretty stiff, it feels kind of hard, but it is responsive and it is fast. So I would say that the midsole is what attributes a lot of this extra kind of pop and speed whenever I'm actually running in this shoe. Now it's also got the M-Strike technology, which is this kind of rocker type of appearance. And it kind of pushes you from midfoot into the forefoot, and I'm more of a forefoot striker anyway, so I don't know how much I'm really relying on that, but yeah, the midsole, a little bit firm, a little bit hard, but definitely fast, responsive. The outsole is, of course, the Goodyear rubber. So the Goodyear rubber meant to be a lot more durable. Now, for me, I tend to wear out very common areas of my shoes pretty quickly. I land a little bit more on the outside of the forefoot, roll straight across and off the toes. And that's exactly where my wear pattern is on this. Now, I would have expected this to maybe last a little bit longer. I think the tread is wearing down maybe a little bit faster than I would have expected. But I think also some of that is I'm starting to learn a little bit more about my own running and my own foot strike. And I think I'm just a lot harder on the outsole of shoes than what I actually think. And that's something that I probably need to work on myself. So, but the outsole, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of rubber here. But even with all of this extra rubber, I think the hyperburst midsole makes it light enough that this is not your typical kind of daily trainer. All right, so now that you know the specs, here's some of the pros and cons. So let's start with the pros. Number one, this is a light shoe. Very light shoe, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it is this hyperburst material. The hyperburst material, it's meant to be lightweight. It's also meant to be fast. That's the second pro that I have. This is not just a typical kind of daily trainer because of the hyperburst material. I think because of the hyperburst material, it kind of forces me to go a little bit fast, and I said that in my initial impression run as well. It just seemed like it was going to be really, really hard for me to control, and I think it still kind of is. I learned how to a little bit, but it's still pretty bouncy and pretty fast and a little bit hard to control for me right now. So I think that the pros, obviously light, fast. For me, this is a pro for me, maybe not for everybody else. There is some pretty good space in the toe box. I like for my toes to be able to move around a little bit more freely, and in this shoe, they're able to do that. Now for the cons. As I mentioned before, the shoe is stiff, the midsole is firm underfoot. And what I noticed over the course of a longer run, or even just getting up into like the 6 or 7 mile range, I started to have a little bit of metatarsal pain. So pain that was kind of coming around underneath the ball of my foot. Now, remember, I strike pretty much on the ball of my foot. So part of that is from my running pattern, my running form. But for my running form, I feel like I need something that's a little bit softer under the forefoot so that I don't end up with these kind of hot spots underneath the ball of my foot. It was never anything that, turns into, a problem. I don't think it's going to lead to stress fractures. I don't think it's going to do anything crazy to where it's going to cause a significant injury. However, just comfort-wise, I would much rather have a little bit more squishiness underfoot. And one more thing, in the right foot, in the right shoe, I was having a little bit of trouble with the insole. It was starting to slide backwards a little bit. Not significantly, it's not like it was coming up out of the shoe like I've heard for some other people, but it was sliding back just a little bit to the point where my toes were just kind of hanging off the end of the insole. And I didn't love that feeling for sure. So especially if I get up into the 10-mile range and I don't really want to feel my toes dropping off the end of the insole throughout the entire run. So that was just one thing for me. And it was only in the right shoe. Why? Not real sure, but just my own observation. Now with all that said, where do I think that this shoe performs best? I think if you can handle the stiffness, this shoe really performed pretty well for me on my longer runs with up-tempo miles in the middle of it. So when I do my longer runs, I pretty much do 2 sessions a week where it's not just easy miles. And one of those is actually my long run. I will go on a long run and I will work on increasing my pace over the course of the first half, peak at about halfway, and then come back down the other side to where I slow back down and ease it back in. With this shoe, I think that the springiness of this shoe and the lightness of this shoe really allowed me to be able to do that and do it very, very effectively. So I think that this shoe performs best in that type of environment, if you can handle kind of that firmness underfoot for your longer runs. So the moment of truth. Would I actually get this shoe again? I think the answer is no. So because of that firmness underfoot and the way that I like for my foot to feel at the end of a long run, I'd rather not be feeling so much of that that discomfort under the ball of my foot. I think that I could find a shoe that's maybe a little bit squishier. I think that the hyperburst, I'm confused by it, because not only did I get this shoe, but I also got the Razor 3, and the Razor 3 hyperburst feels completely different. So I'm kind of torn about, what the hyperburst is actually about. How does it actually feel? It's hard because I can't tell if it's the amount of stack in here, I can't tell if it's the outsole that adds the stiffness, but it just doesn't feel extremely comfortable in this shoe. Now, will I continue to use this shoe? Yes, I know that there are some people that basically they tried to get to 50 miles and basically said no and they threw it away. I'm talking to you, Run Like Heller. But I found that it's soft enough for me to be able to continue to use, especially for those longer runs where I like to kind of build the pace and then bring it back down. I found that this is a really effective shoe for allowing me to be able to do that. So there you have it, guys. There's my 50-mile review of the Skechers Go Run Ride 8. We'll see if I get to 100 and if I can do a review on it then. I'm not so sure it's going to change that much over the next 50 miles as it did over the first, but if it does, I'll make sure and let you guys know about it. Also, a quick announcement. I plan on tomorrow morning, March 24th, going for a 1-mile time trial. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you go down to the links below, follow me on Strava and on Instagram so that you can see kind of what the results of that are going to be. Hope you guys enjoyed this review, and as always, move with freedom.